last class we have seen what is global assembly cache, and I have told you the utility, that is the GAC util, which is used for, so that's the utility. Adding an assembly into the global cache. Now the global cache is a shared location within your operating system. It is usually, in terms of Windows, it will be inside Windows. So if you go to the Windows directory, depending upon which OS you are using, it will be there at a specified location within the assembly. So I am inside Windows, and you are going to see a folder called as assembly. So this is the global assembly cache that is usually contains all the shared DLLs or shared assemblies. So you can notice all the shared one that is required by more than one application will be available here. And if you feel that you have a assembly and that must be shared across many applications, you can directly place it inside the GAC by copy pasting it if it is a Windows, or you can use this utility. Both are valid. However, according to Microsoft, copy pasting is not a suggested one. Instead, they say we are supposed to use this utility, and the name of that utility is GAC util. So this is the name of it. Now there are some switches that you need to use. /I for installation, /U for uninstallation. Suppose if you want to place a DLL file inside the GAC utility, if it is a Windows, just copy and paste it there. If it is some other operating system and you really don't know where is the global assembly, then use this GAC util. It will be available, it's a part of the SDK, so it will be available regardless of your platform. Again, to uninstall, you use -U followed by the name of the utility. Now I don't know where I've kept that thing. Let's imagine that I want to install, I have just created last time I think I created Mani's library. I just showed you that. Now that's not there now. I really don't know where is that particular DLL. Suppose you have this DLL and you want to place it inside the GAC utility. It is GAC utility -I followed by the name of the DLL file that you want to place it there. Press enter. I'm going to get a error message because the file is not there. You specify where that file is, and it's just going to place it there. Inside directly, it's going to place it there. And if you want to uninstall a DLL, just use the GAC utilities -U and followed by the DLL that you want to remove it. The easiest way is to just copy and paste it here, and if you want to delete it, right click and delete it. Now I'm going to just show you the content there. Suppose if you have the GAC utilities, this is the original one. Now if I want to uninstall this, right click on it and just say uninstall. It is much easier to do it, and in Windows it is actually a very easy and safe way of uninstalling a DLL, because when you use this -U here, if you use the GAC utility -U, you must be extremely careful and you must provide the version number that you want to uninstall. If you just say GAC utility -U and Mani's DLL, or suppose say Mani's library, something of that type, if there are multi-version of this library, that means more than one version, how you have it here. If you just look at this particular thing, the name is same, but the version number will be different. You notice there will be change in the version number. I can just show you the thing. The version number will be different. Now if you just say -U and DLL, all the DLLs will be deleted. regardless of the version. Now that may not be what you intended to do. You may want to uninstall only one specific version. In that case, specify the version along with the file name. So you must be careful only with that when you try to uninstall. Remember, just minus u will uninstall all the files with that name regardless of their version. So that is one maybe a bad thing about GAC utility. In future version of Windows, Microsoft may not allow you to copy paste the DLL. As of Windows 7, it is possible to copy a DLL file and just paste it in the global assembly. We'll take it and right click and uninstall, it will do it. But that's not guaranteed by Microsoft. Microsoft may disable a user from adding or deleting the DLLs from the global cache. So in that case, you have to stick on to the global cache assembly utility, that is GAC utility. Let's look at how the DLL works or how the executable file works. Whenever you create a MSIL assembly that is executable, it is first given to the just-in-time compiler. Now, just-in-time compiler, depending upon your application that you have built, your application may depend upon some other DLLs, that is, which are part of your application, as well as which are part of the core library. So, for example, if you use the text box, then text box is part of the core utilities. It is not what you have created, but you might have created your own components. In that case, they are placed in separate DLLs. So when the just-in-time starts compiling it, it will take the personalized DLLs which are specific for the given application, as well as those assemblies which are common, which are available in the global cache, and it starts compiling, it creates object code and it runs it. Again, during the runtime, it may depend upon some of the assemblies that is required by the runtime for the program to work. So it works. Now the next question is, what is the precedence? How does it locate for it? Now, whenever you specify that your application requires a specific DLL, by the way, how do you say that your application is dependent on a given DLL? I've told you, whenever you use this, let's go over here, and whenever you use this ILDASM, you've seen, try to open one file, hope I have one DLL. There is this manifest. Manifest tells on which assembly it depends on. In this case, the first line says that this particular DLL also depends upon MS Corelib. This is the library in which is dependent. So some things are taken from that library. This is the one indication to the compiler that this particular DLL can't be executed on its own. It depends on something else. If you may have many other assemblies, that dependent assemblies which are listed. So this manifest will tell the assembler or MSIL or the CLR, whatever you call it as, which are the dependent assemblies. So based on that, whenever there is a reference, for example, MS Corelib, in the previous case, how does it go? First, it will go and check the GAC, that is global cache. If it is not there, it will then check in the current folder where you have this executable file. If it is not there, you will get an error message saying that it is not able to execute it. Let us summarize the assemblies. Assemblies could be DLL or EXE. What is the difference between a DLL and EXE assembly is the EXE assembly contains one class that has static void main. That means there is one class which can execute on its own. Whereas the DLL may have many classes, but none of them have static void main as one of the method. So in other words, they are non-executable. DLL assemblies are the smallest deployable unit, and you can have a unique version number. And since you have the version number, you can have many DLLs with the same name but with a different version numbers. They contain IL code that need to be executed. Then you can use the security permission to patch this up. Okay. They maintain the type boundary. Now, what is the meaning of saying type boundary? Is whenever we say type, we are referring to a class. Okay, class is a whenever you create object of that type, and there is a self-describing manifest that describes it. Okay, let's look at the other part, that is the security features of .NET. Before that, let me show you the other part. Now I told you, I'm going to exit this thing. I told you that whenever you use this DLL, now this one I'm going to exit this. Just for somebody asked me, do you have the MSDN? Now, if you want to get the MSDN, you directly won't get the MSDN. Now, depending upon which version you are using, this is the Visual Studio, you have it. Go to this help. Go to this manage help setting. That's the second thing over here. Then, when you do this thing, I will just you get this one. Okay, you get the same thing. This is all the help files which are there on the MSDN website. Now, if you want a help, you know very well, in the those who use this Visual Basic and other things, when you press F1, it used to give you a help file indicating all the details about this particular function or a method. But that's not directly available with MSDN because they expect you to come to their website and use it. Now, suppose say you get this kind of thing. After some time, it will update and it will give you this. Now, I want to use the Visual Studio C#, all the help file of that thing. So, if I want to add this, just click on add. Now, I've already done that thing. So, when I do that thing, if I want cancel, I can cancel this. If I want add it, it will say add it. Then say update. But the bad part of it, the thing went off again. It is 178 MB file, so it will download it. If I try to do it, I will just take a risk and do it. I think it just showed you. It will start downloading that thing into your local machine, and then onwards you can use it. Now, I'm not going to download it here because of the restriction that I have. I cannot do it, but if you are at home and you are using it, you can anytime download it. That help file will be available directly in your local machine. So when you press F1, automatically, without even if you are not connected to the net, you're able to get the help, MSDN help in your local machine. Okay, so this is how they use it. The reason they use that thing is, I'll show that thing in the practicals. This time they have made it like a community. So they have their help. If you go to MSDN, suppose say, I'm not very sure, just try to find something. Say system dot object in C#. I'm just searching for it so that I get one link to the MSDN. I should have searched it on my camera. Okay, so I got, you notice here, this is the site which it has it. I try to open that in the new tab. You will notice that the reason why they are doing it is, if you go to this site, Microsoft has provided some help, and at the bottom, in this case it is, there is no direct help. Now, they are allowing other developers to add their content. It's like a Wikipedia, wherein some materials are there. If you want, you can edit and add your own content. So that's the reason they are doing. In this case, I have, for example, somebody has tried to include some additional things. So it is like a community now. They are providing the help. If you feel like that help is not sufficient and the developers must know more than this, you can go, first you have to register it, definitely, then add your content. So you get that thing there. Anyhow, I'm not going to waste my time. You just go there and you'll be able to see it. So the MSDN is not now just a Microsoft giving you the help. It is all the other people, all the other community is trying to help you out with a particular problem. So you will see Microsoft standard help, and at the bottom some additional information given by some other developers, maybe some of them from Microsoft team members itself, who are trying to help you out with the additional information. Maybe they are giving you a reference to their blog and all the details. You can see that thing. That's the reason they made this MSDN as an online. So anytime you go to their site, you get updated information about it. Okay. So now let's go to the other one. I would like to go to this particular program. Where is this one? And Visual Studio. I think I will go to the projects. That bank project was there. This one I hope I have not recompiled it. So you know very well, you can double click and execute. It's nothing big deal over here, and it's going to come over there. And I've told you that the CLR is a process within the operating system. So I'd like to know which process it is running. So I'm going to use. Where did I keep that thing? I think I deleted that thing altogether. Okay, this is a third-party utility that I'm trying to use it. Now, what it does is you get the same kind of utility from Microsoft, and the name of that is Process Explorer. You can search for Process Explorer on the Microsoft, but like all the other products, it may not be interesting thing. This one is, if you're a bit used to this kind of thing. Now, if you feel like one of your system is already affected with the virus, it is not getting detected, you can use this to find out which are the threads that are running under Run DLL. So, I've selected Run DLL, and it's going to tell you what it is trying to use, which thread it is running. So, this is from the Microsoft side. I'm not really interested because it's not going to show you that DLL. Okay. Now I'm using a third-party utility. This was free. Now I'm going to search for my bank application. I have this bank app. This is also same thing. Now it's going to tell me which are the threads that are running under this. So this is bank app. Now if I come down over here, you will notice that there is a DLL that is associated with this bank DLL. This is when I select this, it's a simple application. It's going to tell me how many DLLs, other libraries are loaded along with it. And the one thing that you notice is CLR.dll. This is the one that runs your CLR. So that is by Microsoft. So this is one. And you will also see CLR just-in-time compiler, JIT, running along with it. So when you double click on it, that PE, that what is PE, portable executable file, the header will tell that this particular application depends on some other DLL, and that's the reason the operating system starts these additional things along with it. Apart from that, you may have to interact with your GDI, so you may get something. The kernel.dll, this is running directly along with the OS. And also you will notice that core libraries, which are part of the Microsoft core libraries, are also running. So anytime you can see that thing. So it means to say that when you run a .NET application, what that .NET application is directly doing is it loads a DLL and then starts the thread altogether. So this application was actually loading one of the DLL, that is CLR.dll. Now if you see the property of this is directly from the Microsoft. So this is the module CLR.dll. I'm using the version 4 because I compiled it for the version 4. If the versions were different, it's going to say, and all the other details which is not really required, but one important thing, it's available under .NET version 4. This is a framework. That's a DLL that is responsible for your CLR. Okay, your CLR is because of that one DLL that is running. So you can use that C process, that is the program. You can download that, it's for free. If you feel like you want to know more about it, you can do it. Now let's go to the next part, that is the security. .NET also provides you with the security. I'll quickly go through it. There are different ways in which you can maintain the security. One is the evidence-based security, other one code access security, verification process, role-based security, cryptography, and application domain. Let's look at each one of them. The evidence-based security is your runtime environment search for the evidence. Now, how do I get this evidence? Evidence can be who wrote this code. That's the one. Who has written this code? That is the one evidence. The next one is what this code is trying to do. This again, when the CLR looks into the code, that's the evidence. What is it supposed to do? You can get that thing. And from where did you got that particular thing? Is it from your local intranet or is it from the internet? So this and the next last one is what it is trying to or who is trying to run this particular thing. Is it the administrator? Is it the ordinary user? Who is trying to do that thing? These are all the evidence. Based on the evidence, it can either allow the execution of the code, or it can deny the execution, or it can restrict the capability of your application. Okay, so either you will be your application is given a green signal that you go ahead and execute it, or it may say you don't do it. What's the advantage? Now I can get a code from my unsecured source, but still I can execute it in a restricted environment. Okay, so that's the one good thing about it. So I might have downloaded a application from the internet, and I can put the restriction on that DLL saying that it can't do each and everything because I got it from an unsecured source. I don't want it to fiddle my OS or try to do something which I don't expect it to do. Again, I can put a restriction on the code saying that if this code is executed by an administrator, it can do many things. If it is not being executed by an administrator, then it is not supposed to do something. So you can put the restriction on based on the evidence. Okay. Now, at any time, if you want to make changes to the security aspect of your DLL, you can set the system policy by going to this class call. You can use that particular utility. Okay, this is the one that is used for. This comes along with it. I won't go in depth into that. If you really want to do it, there is a one screen request. You get this modify additional command and so on. You can go through it. I'm not going to waste my time on that. You can use that utility to restrict or put the security restriction on your code. Okay. Again, once your code has been, once it passes the security check, then it can do only the things what it is permitted to do. It can't do each and everything. It just doesn't mean that, okay, if you pass the security restriction, so that's it's like a main gate. If you pass that main gate, then anything is possible. It's not that thing. Even if you pass the main gate, your application code passes that main hurdle, which checks everything, evidence. You come out of that hurdle, and if your program is trying to execute something, it doesn't mean that it can do anything and everything. Entire execution is completely controlled by the CLR. So there is no way that a code is able to do something malicious. It's not possible. So there is a security built onto it. Now there are different ways in which you can verify the security, and to verify the security, you can use pverify.exe. Again, that utility is there. If you want, you can try to access it. Now let's look at the system, the different levels of security that you can have. At global, you have the enterprise policy. Enterprise policy is for the entire enterprise. So you can say that if it is in my company, and if you are running a code, this should be the policy. So that is universally applied across the entire organization. So this is called as enterprise level policy. Then you can have machine level policy. So if this code runs on this particular machine, then certain restrictions are there for it. Again, you can have a user policy. Suppose if this kind of user is executing, then you can have a security. And last one, it depends on the application. Within the application, you can have the restriction. Now, this is not usually controlled by CLR. CLR only manages up to here. The domain, application domain is up to the application. that you are trying to do. So within your application, you can have still further provision for different types of users, and based on that you can have the restriction. I'm not going to show you all of them. This is what I have explained. The role-based security, you are already familiar. When you log in, you get a role associated with it. So either you are an administrator or a guest or a user and so on. Based on your role, either you can do something or you may not be able to do something on this system. Again, these two are, you have already heard about it many times. Whenever we have this role-based security, there are two things which come into picture. One is the authentication. Another one is the authorization. Authentication is a process wherein we try to validate who this user is. So, what credential he has or she has to prove that he or she is a valid user. So, that is by taking username and password or any other type of validation. The next one is, if the user is validated, what are the permissions that is associated with the user? In other words, what are the things that the user is supposed to do or can do and cannot do? So, that is the authorization. Some things are permitted, some things are not permitted. That is the authorization part. The next one, which is part of the .NET framework itself, is the cryptography. It helps you to crypt your content and send it. This is very essential when you try to use the XML document, which are plain text document. If you directly send and stream an XML document across the network, anybody can snoop it and get the content and then manipulate or maybe get the secret out of it. So you can encrypt it and send it. You can ask the other side to decrypt it. So there are a lot of encryption algorithm which are built directly into the DLL, so you don't have to invent the wheel again. They have many different things. There are utilities for signing your assembly with a digital signature. Also, you can generate the hash code and send that hash code along with it. I'll tell you where this is being used. This hash code technique is used by the ASP.NET. I'll explain where it is trying to do it. And again, you can generate the random number to at least maintain the session. Okay, that is the end. I'm not going to go in depth into it. These are the utilities which are there. Casfall is to check the security. MakeCert is used to create the digital certificate. We have GAC utilities, you are already familiar with it. Engine is to convert it into binary format. ILDASM, you are already familiar. SN is to create a unique key for the DLLs. So this is what is there. With that I will just stop and switch back to some other part which is really essential. We are running out of time. That's why I'm going a bit fast. Let's look at what is, how do we start programming in C#. Again, this is going to be a brief explanation. I'm going to go in depth into the subject only when it is absolutely required. Otherwise, I will just give an overall idea because you are already familiar in Java and you are already saying that coding technique is not different from Java. Okay. What is your learning objective from this slide is you must be able to understand the fundamentals and you must be able to write and debug the C# program. This you are familiar by now. Let's look at some of the important things about the C#. This is the review because you are already familiar with the Java. That's why I'm giving that one review there. Some important things that you must know when compared to the other programming language. C# is case sensitive like all the other programs which are already familiar, and every statement is separated by a semicolon. Again, you are familiar with this. Okay. The way in which the program is arranged is we have the namespace, class and method. So at the top boundary we have the namespace. Inside that namespace we can have classes or interfaces or structure or any content. Inside that we have methods, and inside method we have the statements. This is the general structure. We have, you're not able to say, we have this framework class library which is the main namespace that we are mostly using. We create our own namespace for our reference. Then inside that we create the classes which are required by us. Then we create a method inside it, and finally we have the statements. Now, have you done that thing? The answer is yes. Let me create a new project very quickly. I will take a console application because it's not any relevance. I can get rid of this one. So if you see here, you have the top level is the namespace. So that is, then you create your class, then you have your methods. So that is the arrangement. Inside this, you are going to write your own method. That is the hierarchy. We have the namespace, class, then your methods will come. You can have more than one class here. So within a given namespace, I can create one more class called as class, my class. It is perfectly valid. I can have two classes in the same namespace. It is allowed. Okay. Let's go back to the slide now. Some of the features of the programming language now. We have the main thing, main container is the namespace. Namespace contains types. Now, we don't use the word class because it is not just the class that we are creating. We create a type. Now, you know very well. When I create a student, then student is a type of some class. So, if you create an object called a student, it's a type of some class. So, that is usually going to say. Now, the type could be classes, structure, interfaces, enumeration, and delegates. Anything could be a type. Now, inside this class, I can have a constant, I can have field, method, properties, indexes, operators, and so on. So, that is inside this class, or inside this structure, inside this interface, or inside the enumerator, and so on. And whenever we are using the C#, we are not using the header files. We directly include the reference by using system dot something. We use the namespace references. And the way in which you write the method declaration is not important. Unlike your C programming language, if you declare a method after the main program, then you have to write the prototype at the top. That's not really required. So you can have a method written before the static void main. After the static void main, there is no need to write a prototype. That is usual thing even in the Java. So this is how it looks like. We have a program called as a class called as stack, which is placed inside a namespace, whatever it is. Then inside class we may have some fields, some methods, again more than one method. The method may have some statements which are relevant to it. So this is the overall structure of the C# program. Okay. Now let's look at a few other properties of a C#. C# is strongly typed language. What is the meaning of saying strongly typed? Every variable, every constant, every expression that you use, they must be associated with the type. So the type must be defined. So you cannot have a variable or even an expression that validates to something which is not known to the C#. So variable and constant, you are very familiar. Even the expression that you use must validate to a certain type. Otherwise, C# will not accept it. Okay, every method signature that you use, so the prototype of the method must take, whenever you take a parameter to a method, the parameter type must be properly defined. The return type of the method must also be declared. So it requires you to disclose the type before you use it. So when you use a type, what you get, when you say int I or int something, I don't know whether the zoom is there. Okay, fortunately I have that zoom. So when you say int x, what is that you are disclosing? Or if you say here public, say string my method, then int x, what are the things that you are disclosing? Suppose if you write like this, what you get? Okay, first of all, when you say Okay. When you say int x, what is the information that is given to the compiler? First, you are specifying what is the space requirement. So, is it 2 bytes, 4 bytes, 8 bytes, 10 bytes? What is the space that is required by the variable? Next one, what are the maximum and minimum value? Whether int can take less than minus 32,767 or is it that's the minimum limit? What is the maximum limit that the variable or the type can take? The next one, if you are declaring a class or if you are declaring a method, then if it is for the members, how many fields it has? What is the type of the fields? Whether it is an event. So you are disclosing everything to the compiler. So you are disclosing the type first, then you are trying to use it. Then if you are creating a class, then what is the base class from which this class is derived? So that is also there. And the next one is where this particular content must be placed. Is it in the stack or is it in the heap? So that information is provided. The last one is what type of operations are allowed. For example, if you take a int here and if you say one more int b is equal to a plus 2. The plus operator is defined on integers, so there is no problem. But if you take a boolean and if you try to add a boolean with the integer, the compiler won't accept that particular thing because the plus operator is not defined on the boolean. So when you say type, the compiler knows how many spaces it takes, what are the operation, what are the minimum and maximum value it takes. So that you are already familiar with it. Now let's go to the next part, and that is the unified type system. Now C# has a unified means there is unique, there is only one type system which is there. What is the meaning of that thing? All the types that you declare or all the types which are already there with the C#, they have a common base from which everything starts. So there is like a parent from which all the types are derived. Your int, float, double, whatever you have, which is already there with the C#, that is derived from the same parent. The class, student, product or any other type of class that you are creating, they also have the one common point from which everything is derived. That is what is the meaning of saying unified. Okay, unified type system means that C# follows a single type system to which all its data types are connected. Okay, so which is that base class? You are already familiar. The base from which everything starts, or the type, base type from which all the other types starts, are the system dot object. So object like Java, object is the starting point for everything. So every class, every integer that you have declared, int, float, double, whatever you have used so far, all the other student, product, I don't know, whatever the other type, I think I will not use more than that. Everything has derived from the same type. So that is why it is called as unified. Now this is also, it has the same reference with the common type system. Let's recall what is the meaning of saying common type system. Now you must understand there is a difference between C# and Java. In Java, the primitive data types, the int, float and all the other primitive type that you are using, there is no base for them. So they are not derived from the object, they are there on their own. So that's why we have in Java something called as primitive types, which can be used like a object because it is not part of the unified system. Whereas here it is not the case, everything starts from the root. Okay. Now let's recall the things that we are already familiar in the .NET. Okay. .NET has this common type system, and you are already familiar. What is the use of this common type system? It supports whenever you have the common type system, you can derive new type from the existing one. So already system.object is there. If you want to create something new, for example, I want to create an employee or a product or a student, this is my type, I can derive it from the existing type. So you can have that thing. Okay, you can have the whenever you inherit, you know very well, when you inherit a from one class, you get some of its methods. Sometimes you get all of them, sometimes you may not get all of them because they might be marked as private, so they may not be available for the others. But depending upon the declaration, when you inherit from a class, you get almost everything which is there in the base class. Okay, then from your class somebody else can derive it. When you use this int in particular, whenever you type this int and float and all the other, the name that int, that word int or float or double, it's an alias name for existing structure which is there in the C#. So when you say int, it was actually another alias name for system.int32. This is a structure, it is not a class. System.int32 is not a class, it's a structure. Okay, there is a bit confusion when you use this C#. The problem with the C# is it's difficult to understand this concept. When you create a structure, structure has a constructor. Structure can have methods, structure can raise events. So structure works like a class, almost like a class. Only difference is structure is not placed in the heap, it is placed in the stack. It has everything except that it can't go for an inheritance. That's not allowed, but rest it has. You can even go for a restricted polymorphism with the structure. So bit difficult to understand. Solve this particular thing. Structure looks and behaves exactly like a class. There is a constructor for it. You can have a overridable constructor for the structure, which you have not heard in your C programming language, but that is there with it. So it's a bit difficult in the first place to understand that, but it is possible. Okay. Again, the structure itself is derived from the system.object. Main, I think again I lost this. I think I should not use this blue color. I'm getting confused with which color is not getting highlighted here. This is in another color. We have three main types: value type, reference type, and pointers. Remember, C# also supports pointers. But if you want to use the pointers, you have to mark that code as unsafe. Pointers are not handled by CLR. So you have to tell the CLR that this part you don't handle it, I will handle on your own. Whatever you do will be outside the CLR, so there is no protection for that particular code. However, these two parts you are already familiar, value types and reference type. Let's recall what is the meaning of saying value type. When you say value type, slightly more information. Value types are derived from system.value. This comes just below it. Just to show you the hierarchy, at the top you have system.object. That's the main, that's a parent for every other class or every other data type or anything and everything that you create out of C# has to have the base. The last final base is this. Everything starts from here. After this, you get system. One of the derived class out of this is system.value type. This is a derived version of the system.object. Your data type int32. Int32 is that int. Whenever you use this int x, that's the alias name for this structure. Okay, this is a structure that is derived out of that. Okay, some derivation is there. I told you there is no inheritance. Then how did you got the derivation? I'll come back to that. I won't worry about that. How it is possible? Okay, all of them, all what you are creating is coming out of it. And remember, it's a structure. Int is not a class. It may have a method, it may have everything, but it's not a structure. Let me go to this Visual Studio and let me go here and declare int x equal to pi. Now if I keep this cursor, it just say x. Now you know very well pi is an integer. It's an integer type. I'm going to keep my mouse cursor over here and you'll notice what it says. It's a structure of type system32. It's a structure, it's not a class. Now I have a class here, my class. Let me take the other one. Okay, I'm going to say string my name equal to, and you know very well this part itself, this is no doubt, it's a string. This part itself is a string. This word itself is a string, double quoted. So strings are immutable, already familiar. So if I keep over here, what does it say? It's a class. It's not a structure. Look at the difference. All your numerical data types, Boolean data types, they are all structures. They are not the class by itself. So you can't create your own integer out of the int which is available. So you can't have that. The inheritance, it's not possible. Let's go and let's say, what about this float? Float x is equal to 4.5. If I put a semicolon, is it all right? Is it right? Is it allowed? What is the problem with 4.5? Anybody? Any guess? Yes? From Java? Any guess? Yes? By default, when you put .5, the double is taken as the default. Okay? What did I? Yeah, sorry, X is already default. So now it is alright. Now if I keep my cursor on it, it's going to say it is a structure of type single. Now if I remove this F from here, it will have to show me as it's a double. Okay, by default, any point the precision is like Java, it is the same old thing. The precision is always double is taken as the primary precision. Okay, so you are all numerical type. What about Boolean? Okay, I left that particular thing. Let me quickly go to this Boolean. What is this? Again, I'm not interested in that. Remember, this is a variable type. If I keep it over here, you notice again, it's a structure. So all your primitive data types, they are all structures by default. They are not classes. Okay. Remember that thing. Let's go back to the place. Okay. Everything is derived out of system.object, not directly, but all your value types are derived from system.value, which itself is derived from system.object. All the others, the reference type like string, array, class, everything is directly derived from the object. So they are not the derivation of a structure type. Okay, I think the next one, whenever you use the value type, the values are directly stored along with it. So what is the meaning of that? Let me go a few slides further. When you create a value type, if you say int I equal to 17, then I itself contains the value. So the value itself is there at that location. Whereas in the reference type, the original content is elsewhere on the heap. What is there here? Suppose say yes is equal to hello. Hello is a string which is an object of type string, but that object itself is not available here. A reference or a pointer to the object is available. So yes or yes1 will be there in this stack, but they will not contain the value. They contain a pointer or a reference to the objects which are there in the heap. So when you say reference type, the variable contains a pointer to the actual object which is there on the heap. Whereas when you say it is a value type, the variable itself will contain the value. So here 17 is there directly in the stack itself along with the variable, whereas hello is not there with the variable. There is another difference between a reference type and the value type, and that is when you assign a value. So for example, I have int I is equal to 17, then I say int j is equal to I. So what is happening? In this case, the value itself is replicated. So I has 17, the 17 itself is replicated here. What about the string? if you have a string s equal to hello, and if you create one more string s1 and assign the value s to this s1, then s1 will not contain one more reference to hello, or it won't create one more object for one more string called hello. Instead of that, both of them will have the reference to the same object. So it is when you say s1 equal to s2, what is given is the address that was placed here is passed to the other variable. So both of them will point to the same location. The next one, by default, whenever you create a value type, when you say int I, just when you say int I, assume that there is no equal and other thing. If you just say int I, automatically the CLR will call the constructor of that structure. So you declare int, say, let's say if you just say int k, just do this thing, it is automatically initialized. The initial value, and as you can guess, the initial value for that k, I will just do that, int k, the initial value for this k, even though I have not assigned any value, I have just declared it, the initial value for k, you can guess, is 0. It automatically initializes for double 0.0, you are already familiar. The reason why it happens is, when you just declare like this, int k, it automatically calls the constructor. If you assign a new value, it calls a constructor with the parameter that is overridable the other constructor, and does that thing. But whereas when you create, for example, if you create only this part, assume that it is not there, this part is not there. So when you say string yes, there is no initialization. So what is there in the string is the null. Okay, so the reason is it's a reference type. Reference type can have null, but remember the value type can't have null. It is not in the strict sense. You cannot assign in a very general way. You cannot assign null to a value type. Again, I'm using the caution again. It is in the general way. But if you have a nullable type of value type, then it is possible. I won't go in depth into it. If the value type has implemented an interface called as a nullable interface, then it can take it. Now that was started from version 2.0, wherein they are changing almost everything, make it very flexible. In the olden days, value types, there was no way in which you can assign a null to it. Later they changed and said that if a value type variable, for example, if this int implements a interface called as nullable, then you can assign null to it. Now that is too much of confusion. So in a general case, it's not possible to assign a null value to a value type. And if you want to assign a null to a value type, you have to implement a interface called as nullable. That is the restriction that you have. Let's go to the value type. Now I've told you what is a value type. Now there are two main type of value types. One is struct and the enumeration. You're already familiar with the structure and enumerations in your C programming language. Okay, all the built-in types are struct. Whatever you have, int, float, whatever is there. Because it is a struct, and again I told you, structure has its own constructor. Structure can have the field. Structure can have a method. Automatically you can make use of the built-in enumeration or built-in type which are there in this structure. For example, I can go here and say int x equal to 5. If I want to initialize it with something else, I can say int x maximum value. Now from where did I get this value? Because int is a structure. There is a property. Again, you have created a property. You can have a property, read-only property, which is part of it. Anytime you can assign it. However, you can't have the inheritance on that kind of things are not possible. But rest is possible. Bit difficult to understand at the beginning, but it's all possible with this one. Okay. Value types by default are sealed. That means this is the property of the structure. Structures are sealed. What is this sealed? You are familiar with this finalized. What is finalizing? What's the meaning of saying finalized class? In Java, what is the meaning of saying finalized class? A class that is complete. There is no more derivation for this class. Suppose if you say I have created a class and I don't want somebody else to inherit this class and create something else, then I just declare this class as finalized. This is in Java. If I say finalize my class something, finalize class finalize in something, that means to say this class is complete. There won't be any more derivation out of this class. You are sealing this class from getting inherited and overridden and all those things. You just stop the others from using it. One of the example is your string. String is the best example for everything. You cannot create something out of that string. If you want to create something of your own type which is like a string, you have to start from this scratch. Java is not allowing you to override a string and add your own methods. So you can't add a method called as palindrome for the string. So you can't say my class inherits from a string and add one more extra method called as palindrome is palindrome. That's not allowed because the string itself is finalized. So Java said that's the end of the string. You want, you use it. If you don't like it, you create your own classes. We are not allowing you to override. Now how do I do the same thing in C#? If I say that okay, I created a class, you want, you use it, I'm not allowing you to override or create one more derivation out of it. I just say it is a sealed class. When I say put the word sealed, it's a keyword in front of the class. It means to the compiler that that's the end of the class. If they want, they can use it. They are not allowed to create their own type. However, again, I'm not going to the version 4. This was the olden version. With the version 4, what they have done is they have something called as extensibility. You can extend an integer class by adding extra method. Even if though it is a sealed or anything, you can extend it. That's again one flexibility they have added. I can directly say that it is not possible. Version 4, you can take int. I wanted to show that demonstration in the last practicals, but you were very hungry, so I left there. It is possible to take this int, which is complete by itself, and add one more method called as isPrime or isodd or anything. You can extend. Remember, the idea is only extend. You cannot override. They are not allowing you to override one of its method. You can extend. What is the meaning of saying extend? Add additional methods. It's allowed. This is called as extensible. You're extending a class, and in fact they have taken it to one large leap by going for something called as managed extensible framework, MEF it is usually called as. MEF is a way in which you create a DLL. Suppose your program depends on a DLL, and tomorrow the DLL changes, a new version of DLL comes. You delete this DLL, get the new DLL, place it in the same location with the new version, restart the program. Program will automatically detect it. Have you seen this example? The answer is yes. See this part. This is one of the best example that they are giving. I got this particular thing here and all the other. That is because I am using this power tool. I just told you. What is this power tool? Power tool is an extensible for Visual Studio. Visual Studio runs on its own. The minute it detects that there is a DLL, there is a way in which you write the DLL, not anything, everything is not possible. If you write a DLL in a specific way and just add it to the DLL location of Visual Studio, automatically Visual Studio, without doing any change in the configuration or without recompiling or without doing anything, the program will automatically detect those DLL and extend itself. So that is called as Managed Extensibility Framework, MEF, within the .NET. And they have given Microsoft, you know very well, whenever they do something, they try it on their own product and say, we have succeeded and you can also succeed. This product is actually a demonstration for two things. One is Windows Presentation Foundation. They told the world that we are not joking. We have a very different framework, Windows Presentation Framework, and we have created this application. We have created Office 2007, 2010. If you like that thing, if you want to create that kind of application, go to this framework. So then everybody started deviating from there. Manage a extensibility framework, that is MEP. MEP was demonstrated with this and with the SharePoint. If your SharePoint is not there, they have demonstrated that its capability, how important it is, or how strong that concept is in the two things. There are many other places where they have demonstrated. So that is about Microsoft part. Okay, each time a value type, let me come back to this. Each time a value type is created, it always calls its default constructor. Again, this is in different color. I can't show you that color. Let's go to the reference type. What is the reference type? Whenever you create a reference type, for example, say my text box, text box equal to my text box, what is happening? This part, the variable my text box is there in the stack, but actual text box will be there elsewhere. For example, if you just create like this, you know very well, text box is a class. So this is a variable that is placed in the stack. This is an object that it is pointing. It is placed in the heap. So it is in the heap, and a pointer is made to this location. So that is what is being shown there. Your variable is here in the stack. It contains a pointer that points to the other side. So reference type stores the address of the data. So it stores the address of the data. In other words, it's a pointer that is stored in the address type. Now, because the values or the data is stored in the heap, this is managed by the garbage collector. Whereas value types are not handled by the garbage collector because it is not there in the heap. The garbage collector only bothers about the heap. It will not bother about the stack. The reason is, in the stack, if you don't want something, you just pop the element. If you want to put something, you push the element. That's the only thing. There is no need to go behind the variable to find out which allocation was given to it and remove and give it to the free space. That kind of things are not there for the stack. So the reference types are only controlled by the garbage collector. Value types are not controlled by the garbage collector because it's not really required. That concept is not required. Again, you are already familiar. Assigning the variables will assign in terms of the previous case. When the two values are assigned, int I is equal to j. J is already declared. Values are copied. If you try to do it with the reference variable, only the address is copied, not the actual data. Okay. Also, the next one, because it's an object type, you can have inheritance, polymorphism, and so on. You can create anything. You can derive something of your own and use it. So these are the difference between a reference type and value type. You can anytime get a question, write the difference between a reference type and value type. What is the difference? Variable that is of type value type directly contains the value, whereas reference type will not contain the value, it contains the reference. Okay. Variable of reference type point to the place where the content exists. The next one, value types are stored in the stack, reference types are stored in the heap. Value type cannot contain null value. Again, that is a slight generalization. Nullable interface value type can contain null, but okay, for the simplest one, you can say reference type contain null value because it's an address. Value type have a default implied by the constructor of the struct from which they are derived. Reference type will not have a default value. So when you say int k, it has a default value 0. If you say double x, x has 0.0. Automatically values is initialized, but that's not the case. Value types are derived from system.value, whereas reference types are directly coming from the other side. Values are always from here. Value type, reference types are directly pulled out from the system.object. Okay. Value type can't have a derivation. You can't create a new type out of it. Anytime you can create a new type of the reference type provided it is not C. Changing the value will only change its content. For example, I'll just go back here. This example. If you change the value after assigning, so I equal to 17, j equal to I, both of them are 17. If I change the value of I and make it as 18, only I is affected, not j. What about here? You are already familiar. Because S is pointing to hello, S1 is also pointing to hello. If I make changes here, both of them are affected. This is a known concept whenever you have the object type. Okay. That is the general concept of the variable value type and the reference type. Let's come back to the C# now. C# has value types, reference type and pointers. Mostly Microsoft doesn't like to give you more information about pointers, is they don't expect you to use the pointers. But if you are helpless, you can always use the pointers. Otherwise, according to their own documentation, they say if possible avoid it. Okay. What is there inside value types? Inside value types we have simple value types. I hope you will be able to see that. Simple value types are Boolean, character, byte and so on. You are already familiar with the data type. These are enumeration and structures are user defined. Again they are under value types. Again under the reference type you can create classes, interface, arrays and delegates. They are also called as user defined. Why we call it as user defined? They are your own data types. They are not the one which is built into there. They are not predefined. You can derive something out of it. Finally, we have pointers. We don't talk anything about the pointers. The reason is very obvious. Value types you are already seen. Value types could be any numerical type, Boolean, structure or enumeration. Can be initialized with the new operator. I will just show that thing. You can use, this is very strange one. I won't go to the Visual Studio now. I say int my int. I can say int my int equal to 0. This is the one way of initializing. Also, because it's a structure and because I told you that structure also can have a constructor, we can call the constructor of int. So remember, it's a structure. Structure also has a constructor. What is done with this new statement? You are calling the constructor of the structure. A bit difficult to understand in the beginning because we are used to classes and the constructors. Here structures can also have a constructor. So you are calling the constructor of the structure. Both are identical. You say I equal to 0, it will call a one of its overridable constructor, or in this case we can directly call it. So this is what is the meaning of it. Assignment always copies the value. You are already familiar with that. Okay. What are some of the predefined types? You are already familiar, int, sign and so on. Every predefined type, either unsigned, signed, int, float and all of them, they are the alias for one of the corresponding structure. How many such things are there? When you say sbyte, it's an alias name for system.sbyte. When you say int, it's a other name or it's an alias for int32. Either you say system.int32 or int, it's one and the same. Both are pointing to the same location. It's the same structure, but this is much easier because we are used to this int, float and other things. So they have given you, it's like a alias name that they have given. Indirectly it will be using the same thing. Now as usual, sbyte uses 1, short 2, int 4, long 8, byte 1 byte, unshort, this is unsigned short 2, unsigned 4. There is nothing new here. The size is one and the same. When it comes to the float, you have 4 bytes. For double, it is 8 bytes. You are already familiar with this structure or this concept. Now there is one additional thing in the floating point, and that is decimal. Now decimal is a 16-bit, very lengthy size. Now if you take this double, it is 8. Decimal is double the double. Okay. So you can have a very large number. 128 bits are allocated. Now if you're doing some high precision financial or any other type of application, you can use it. Remember, very important thing, why do we have to bother about the bits? You know this floating point concept. When you say, for example, if you take this, I will just show you this one, e to the power minus 45. So you say here minus 40, very large, dot 00000 something and 45. What is stored? Remember, what is stored? Do you get something like 1.0123 something like after point? Do you get all the 45 digits? It is not. So some of you are not aware of that fact. Now, if this is the case, will I get like this 23.456 this kind of thing? I won't get all of them. How many numbers I can get after this decimal points? This is decided by the digit precision that you have. Even though this is 45 means 0.0000, 45th you can go very large number. Entire thing is not stored. Remember, many things are gone. How much, what is the actual precision that you get is dependent upon how many bits you have for this allocation. So be careful with it. So when you say double, you may be tempted to say that okay, minus 1 to up to 300 digit you can get. You won't get it. The precision is only up to that 8 bytes. That is 64 bit precision you get. After that, it is just 10 to the power. It is trying to do it. So after that, if the value is just a guesswork that it is trying to do it. So if you are doing a heavy mathematical calculation, what is the advantage that you get here is you go up to 28 bits. So you go up to 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, up to 28 digit precision you get it. After that, it is still gone. If you go beyond that, it is gone. Maybe this may be required. So suppose you are putting one component on your laptop, this motherboard is there, lot of components are there, so you program a robot to place a chip. Now if you take the floating point, what will happen is, even though you may say that there is a 45 digit precision is there, it's going to put it at the precise position. It may not do that, because after that 7 digit, it is only 10 to the power, it is trying to guess work, so it may go here and there and put a component at a wrong place. If you want a very precise and accurate value, it is only this, that is 28 digit. Beyond that, it is again not possible. So don't just get carried away by this one. How did they got this one? This is because they are multiplying that number with the 10 to the power minus 5 or minus 50 or some value, and that corresponds to the actual value. So only your accuracy is only either 7 digit or in this case 15 digit or 28 digit. After that, 0.1, 2, 3, 4, after 28 digit, it is only guesswork that it is trying to do. So you might have encountered this problem. Floating points, whenever you are using floating point, the reason why we go for double is that it just up to that 28 digit it is, or 17 digit or 16 digit is accurate. After that, even though the actual documentation says 10 to the power 55, 95, 85, that's not going to, you are not going to get the digits after this. So 2.1, 2, 3, 4, after 15th digit, nothing can be stored because your 4 bytes are used up. So then how do you get that thing? That is because it is just multiplying it with the 10 to the power. It then predicts that that's the value. So that's the reason they have gone for it. So this is 16 digit if you are going for a high level calculation. Then for characters, we have 2 bytes. I think I showed that previously it was 1 byte. It's actually 2 bytes. 2 bytes is because it is a Unicode. They are using character as Unicode. That means any type of language characters can be stored. English, Hindi, Marathi, Tamil. You have already seen in the text box. We just created a text box XML program which shows you the content in the label. Every characters, you know that it is in the other Asian languages. The reason is it is 2 characters they are storing. Boolean is 1 byte, which is there. So again, I think you are already familiar with the default numbers, so it's not a big deal. you have this unsigned. What is the difference between a signed and unsigned? What's the difference between signed and unsigned? What is the difference between signed and unsigned? If somebody asks you, what's the difference? Yes? Don't tell me sign can take numbers. Sign and others can't take sign. What's the difference? Difference is with one bit. What is that one bit? What is that one bit? In unsigned, there is no sign bit. That is why you get the full range. Whereas in the sign bit, are you familiar with it? The last, the highest bit after that one bit is reserved for the sign. We call that thing. There is one bit reserved for this sign. That is why your integer is 32,000. Why 32,000? Why not 64 something? You just look at here. If you take integer, this is 4 byte, and if you take unsigned, it is 4 something. You notice that it is a double than this. What is the reason? Because in this 2 to the power last, this is 32. That 2, it is, this value is 2 to the power 32. This is a very large number. What about this one? It is 2 to the power 31. Why that 31? Because it is an integer, and because you want to store that minus sign, one bit is given for that. So that sign bit just reduces it by half. Look at the reduction. It is by half. So if you know that you want a very large positive number, just go for unsigned integer. You get all the 32 bits range. 2 to the power 32 will come. Otherwise, you get 2 to the power 31. The remaining one bit, that is, I don't know, in your case, if you take this is the least significant bit, this is the highest significant bit, that's the one after this highest significant bit, the next bit is reserved for the bit. So you are familiar. You start with the sign bit, then the numbers will come. Okay, that is the reason you are getting that. Again, Boolean, if you take Boolean, it can take 0 and 1. Boolean have a specialized values, true or false. It is not same as 0 and 1. This is familiar from the Java. The next one is the reference type. You have arrays, string, classes, interface, delegate, and object. I'll talk about it as and when we encounter. The other important thing, like Java, we also have boxing and unboxing. What is the use of boxing in Java? Why do you use boxing in Java? Why do you use boxing in Java? Yes? Your primitive types are there, int, float, and other things. They are not object. Suppose if you want to treat them as an object, what you are doing? You temporarily convert the int, float, and in Java, I'm talking in Java, you convert this int, float, and other things temporarily as a object. Then treat it like an object. That is called as boxing. Boxing is a process in which you take the primitive type and put a box around it and treat it like a object. What is unboxing? You take that object, remove the box out of it, treat it like a primitive type. Remember, in Java there are two main things. One is the primitive type, which are not object. The int, float, double, they are not object. They are separate thing. They don't have any properties of object-oriented concept. Nothing comes there. So if you want this int, which is primitive, which is not object, to be treated as an object, you just box it. Suppose if you have an object and you don't want it to treat like an object, unbox it and get it back. Everything is not possible. Each and everything can't be done. But if you have a integers which is treated like a object and you want to get it back to the primitive type, use unboxing. The same concept is used here. However, the style is slightly different. Now, if you want to convert a value type into reference type, look at the difference here. If you want to convert a value type into a reference type, I am not saying if you want to convert a primitive to an object, it is not the case. In C#, there is nothing called as primitive int, primitive float, nothing of that type. Everything is derived from the system.object. So they have all the object oriented properties with them. Everything is part of, it's a 100% object oriented. Unlike your Java, some part is not object oriented, and which is that part is all the integer float and all the primitive that you use heavily, they are non-object. So they don't have that object oriented properties. That is why it is not 100% object oriented, whereas this is 100% object oriented. Everything is derived. So there is that concept of derivation and all this polymorphism, everything is there. But here what is the difference? You have this value type. Where do you store this value type? In this stack. The value type is stored in this stack. If you want to move the value to the heap, then you use the boxing. Boxing is a process wherein you take this value type, push it to the stack. When you push it to the stack, what will happen? It can be easily garbage collected. So if you have a situation of that type, then you go for boxing. We'll see that thing